Finally back to Konoha. Jiraiya looked at the Konoha village standing in the distance, and said excitedly. Orochimaru and Tsunade behind them also looked excited at this time. The mission of going out of the village for more than a month made these children who had never traveled far feel very tired. Although the exotic scenery along the way is very good, but after staying for a long time, I still feel that my village is good. In terms of wealth and development alone, there is no place in the whole ninja world that can compare with Konoha, and most of the delicacies from various countries can also be found in the food street in the village. There is no need to travel far at all, and Muya village is also the first place in the whole ninja world to popularize electric lights. On the central commercial street, it can even be said that it is day and night. Among the surging crowds, the frenzy drove the economic development of the village, if Konoha still needed financial assistance from the Fire Nation before. So now he can be self-sufficient initially. Of course, the daimyo can't give a cent of the money that should be given. At the same time, it represents that the village can initially exist without this feudal country. This is exactly what Danzo wants to do, and the pilot has proved that his plan is feasible. The dusty plan in the depths of my heart began to lay its first step. When he came back to his senses, he had already reached the gate of the village. Looking inside, the small two-story stone wood buildings replaced the original log cabins, neatly arranged in rows on the street. Everything is exciting. Master Danzo, welcome back to the village. The two ninjas in charge of guarding at the entrance of Konoha village straightened up quickly when they saw the returning Danzo and the others. With piercing eyes, they are all people who have fought against Danzo before, and they respect him very much in their hearts. Hearing what they said, Danzo nodded at them with a smile, and motioned for the people behind him to walk into Konoha. Orochimaru and others ran into the village like swallows returning to their nests. But Mifune seemed a little at a loss, holding the sword in his arms tightly. The clean streets, the numerous buildings, and the crowds completely overwhelmed this country that has lived in the Iron Country since childhood. It almost stopped for a while and looked around. Based on his life experience, he never expected such a beautiful and prosperous place to exist in this world. There is no snow, so there is no need to wrap yourself tightly. Everyone has a happy smile on their faces, and there are still a lot of white-haired old people with rosy complexions and their grandchildren wandering leisurely on the street. And judging by their appearance, they are just ordinary civilians. You must know that in the Iron Country, it is rare to see old people of this age. Even if there are, they only exist among the nobles, because only the nobles have sufficient food and qualified medical resources to support the survival of the elderly. Even his vassal, Mr. Ono, said that in some extremely backward countries, all elderly people will leave the family when they reach a certain age, so as not to cause a burden. As for where they can go after leaving the family, it is not clear. He didn't say the result, but the expression on his face was extremely helpless. I have a clear realization in my heart that no matter what the future holds, at least we must build the Iron Country into a country where the elderly can rely on themselves. Therefore, in Mifune's view, the number of elderly people is also an extremely important indicator to measure a place. I didn't expect to see with my own eyes what I envisioned for the future in this place. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but look at teacher Danzo who was walking in front. Everyone here looked at him with respect. It's the same as him in the Iron Country, except that he is because of his noble status, but Mr. Danzo's surname is not a rich family. It seems that I am on the right track when I come to Konoha. In the future, if I want to develop the country of iron, maybe I can learn something here. Not just swordsmanship, but also something else. This is his mission as the future general of the Iron Kingdom. Arrive. Just as he was thinking wildly, Danzo had already led him to the Hokage building. The whole person almost bumped into him. He turned his head away from Danzo, and looked up at the power center of the No. 1 Ninja Village. The appearance is simple, but it is difficult to hide the domineering inside, and it is also in sharp contrast with the beautiful small building not far away. Leading the three boats into the inside step by step. He followed closely, not daring to look at him casually. Although the people looked friendly, he was from outside the village after all. Rather than being friendly to himself, it is better to say that he is being kind to the man in front of him. Soon, one big and one small stood outside Hokage's office. Danzo knocked on the door casually and strode in. As soon as he entered the door, a golden horse flew over. Danzo stretched out his hand and firmly caught the thing flying towards his head. Senju Tobarama raised his head to look at the person who came. The words that he wanted to reprimand slipped to his lips and then retracted. Instead, it was an unconcealable surprise. Do you understand, Danzo? Are you back? He weighed the thing in his hand and took a closer look. It turned out to be a pen cap. Of course, the task is completed perfectly, teacher. He walked forward with a proud face, and handed the pen cap in his hand along with the assignment documents to his teacher. He took the document he handed over, put it on the table, rolled his eyes, and said angrily. Hey, you have the nerve to say that you have done a task in just over a month. Ah ha ha. Danzo put his hand on his head, smiled innocently, a little guilty, stopped along the way, and played a lot. As soon as he rolled his eyes, he sold his apprentice completely. Isn't that the three brats like to play, and it's rare to get out. HMPH. Hearing his answer, he didn't say anything, and looked at Mifune standing behind Danzo. Where did you kidnap this kid? Danzo glanced at him faintly, and Mifune understood, stepped forward and said calmly. Your Excellency Hokage, I am Mifune, a family of generals from the Iron Kingdom, who admire Danzo-sama's swordsmanship, and come here to learn from him. The movements in his hands paused for a moment, and Senju Tobirama couldn't help but look up at Danzo. Good guy. The general family of the Iron Kingdom, if I remember correctly, this little guy is still the heir of the direct line, and my stupid apprentice can even fool him? His mind turned wildly, and he immediately figured out the benefits that Sanchuan could bring to the village. Then you can't just let him go. Although the Iron Country is a neutral country, it has a lot of defensive power, which is enough to affect the situation of the battle. No matter what, he had to be branded with Konoha. The two masters and apprentices looked at each other, and when their eyes crossed, they reached an instant consensus in their hearts. Not knowing if it was a hallucination, Mifune seemed to see two foxes, one big and one small, wagging their tails at him in a trance. But no matter what, I can finally stay in Konoha now. With the protection of these two people in front of him, it should be just an illusion. How could such a safe place be dangerous? The next day, in Konoha's largest training ground, one big and four small figures appeared in it, and Danzo looked at the three of Tsunade. All of them were only one step away from Chunin. Now is the time to start planning for their future direction. Now the location of the trio is almost determined. Jiraiya, as the front line facing the enemy, is responsible for the strong attack, but unfortunately he does not have a strong view of the overall situation. As the first batch of medical ninjas trained by Konoha, Tsunade is naturally in charge of this direction, and she may be allowed to join the medical department in the future. If nothing goes wrong, the head of the medical department is reserved for her. Orochimaru, of course, joined the scientific research department. If he didn't join, wouldn't it be tantamount to a crime? According to the characteristics of each of them, Danzo specially created a corresponding training plan for them. Spiritualism can be arranged for them, and Jiraiya should also be in the process of using spiritism, reversely channeling himself to Mount Miaomu. It has to be said that stupid people have stupid blessings, and a gangster toad and a hot-blooded reckless man are really a perfect match. Tsunade has his own inheritance, and the Slug Immortal is the most gentle of the three holy places, so don't worry about that. On the contrary, Orochimaru's inheritance in the Ryuji cave is a bit problematic. The 10,000 snakes are the most arrogant of all psychic beasts, and when they appear on the stage, they want so-called virgins. What's more, he still can't learn the immortal mode of the inheritance place, so it's a pity that he can't eat it and throw it away. I can only pay more attention when Orochimaru is practicing psychics. If that silly snake dares to be the same as in the original book, I will knock out all its teeth. Shaking his head, he took out a scroll from the ninja bag and handed it to the three of Tsunade. Now these little guys have all passed the chakra control stage. The next step is to learn the changes in chakra's attributes, such as Naruto's spiral ball technique, Sasuke's Chidori technique. These advanced ninjutsu learning requires the foreshadowing of this stage. Tsunade, for you, just train according to the above plan, and Jiraiya's training plan can also proceed to the next stage. After the three of them went to training with their plans, Danzo set his sights on Mifune, who was standing upright. Want to follow? He who was looking enviously at Jiraiya and the three who left, suddenly felt a chill all over his body, and couldn't help shivering. He quickly turned his head and looked ahead. No, Danzo-sensei. Hearing what he called himself, Danzo didn't bother to correct him, and put his hand on a scroll he brought. As the smoke dissipated, a dark iron block appeared on the spot. Facing Misafune's puzzled eyes, he coughed lightly. Whenever you can cut it off with a single blow, you will be considered to have truly stepped into the threshold of swordsmanship. Ah? Teacher, are you kidding me? Chopping iron blocks with a knife? Even the strongest samurai in the Iron Country dare not say that he can do it. Perhaps this thing just looked like a piece of iron, and the unwilling Mifune drew out his samurai sword, aimed it and chopped it down fiercely. The violent vibration almost caused him to throw the knife in his hand, and a gap suddenly appeared on the blade. This situation made him look suspiciously at Danzo. Can this thing really be cut off with a knife? Danzo didn't say anything, took the samurai sword with a gap in his hand, slowly closed his eyes, and stood in front of the iron block. In an instant, the knife he was holding had turned into a phantom, cutting it in two like cutting tofu without any hindrance. As the iron block fell, Danzo stuck the knife on the ground, stood with his arms folded, and looked at the sky at a 45-degree angle. Mifune opened his jaw wide in shock. The knife is still the same knife. The iron block is still the same iron block. The only difference is the person who uses the knife. He trotted forward and touched the cut surface of the cut iron block. The cold touch indicated that it was a piece of iron, and the gap on the samurai sword still existed. All kinds of performances are proving that swordsmen of this level really exist, but in his eyes it is just a threshold, so what is the next realm? A broad avenue of swordsmanship has appeared in front of him with starlight. Turning around to look at Danzo, his eyes were shining with incomparable light, and he knelt down. Teacher, I want to learn this. While watching the whole process from afar, Senju Tobarama watched the whole process, and his eyes shifted to the Thunder God sword in his hand. Is what this kid said true or false? Can a samurai still play like this? The sword that I have practiced for so many years has been practiced on dogs? Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that, brat. Danzo, who folded his arms, took a deep breath, and he had only recently reached the state of cutting iron. Of course, what I'm talking about is simply relying on the realm of swordsmanship, not the use of skills or armed colors. Otherwise, even if Mifune had his own teaching, he would probably have to practice for 10 years. Try to let him experience the way of the blast. According to the mission description, he had to master a skill to complete the mission. Zan's Steel Flash is the most suitable for Sanchuan at this stage. Now he is still under control, and then he can train, tune, and teach well. He took out a scroll again, and after opening it, a weightlifting barbell appeared in place, and this weight even slightly pressed down the ground it touched. The dust from the shaking made Mifune swallow hard, and turned his head mechanically to look at Danzo. The next part of your training is to strengthen your arms. As soon as these words came out, his face immediately turned pale. The content of this training is really simple and crude. Gritting his teeth, he walked to the barbell, his legs formed into a horse stance, and after picking it up, he swung it out of breath, his arms bulging with veins. Feeling the ever-changing airflow in the air, Danzo nodded. This weight is just right, and he will increase it again in the next stage. It's just that people in the ninja world can't practice like this with their physical fitness. Silently, he took out the little red bottle from the system space, and it turned into mist and diffused around Mifune with the controlled airflow, constantly repairing his damaged muscles. For some reason, Mifune always felt that every time his arm was so weak that it was almost unbearable, there was always an inexplicable force supporting him in training. Ha, ha. Every swing is full of sweat, and Danzo is constantly modifying his technique of swinging the knife. Try to make sure that every muscle is being exercised. The wind spirit danced beside the two, as if celebrating the beginning of the wind's inheritance on this continent. Seeing that there was nothing wrong with Mifune's training, he turned around and walked towards Jiraiya and others. Soon, he crossed half of the training ground and came to them. It just so happened that it was Jiraiya's first time to use psychic spells. He put his fingers in his mouth, and when he was about to bite off, he heard the voices of his friends and stopped his movements. Teacher. Looking at the wounds on the fingers of the two, one can tell that their psychic spells have been used up, and then only Jiraiya is left. After thinking for a while, Danzo handed him the flying thunder god Kurenai on his body, feeling uneasy, and reminded him again. You must not make a mistake in the technique of spiritism. Do you know? Just in case, otherwise, if he succeeds in reverse psychic this time and runs directly to Mount Miaomu or other places, he won't even be able to cry. Who knows, if you want to find someone in this huge ninja world, if you look for it by yourself, you may have to find someone in the year of the monkey. Jiraiya also scratched his head and patted his chest. How is it possible? Even Orochimaru can succeed, of course I can, as long as I have hands. Although he said so in his mouth, he also took over Danzo's kunai. This kunai is engraved with dense spell formulas, and it can be recognized at a glance that it is the flying thunder god kunai. It was also a birthday gift from the master to his teacher, and he was present at that time. After putting it into the ninja bag, he took a deep breath, nodded to the people behind him, his face was serious, and his hands began to seal. Hai Shu Yu Shen Wei, put the thumb of your right hand in your mouth, bite down hard, and slap the ground hard. The black curse mark quickly spread from the palm to the ground, and a magic circle was formed instantly with white smoke. Danzo looked at Jiraiya's technique and nodded. It seemed that there was no problem this time. He casually glanced at the magic circle on the ground, and his body froze immediately. Ideo. Labor and management knew that you, a kid, would have problems. The magic circle on the ground was completely reversed from the psychic magic circle I gave them, which meant that Jiraiya had also reversed himself to the original psychic beast. Bang. The white smoke slowly dissipated. Tsunade and Orochimaru widened their eyes to see what psychic beast their little friend had summoned. As the white smoke dissipated, Jiraiya was nowhere to be seen. Only one tadpole kept beating in place. Looking at this psychic beast, he let out a breath silently. It seems that he still ran to Miaomu Mountain. He strode forward and packed up this little tadpole. He was probably the descendant of a giant toad in Miaomu Mountain. He was accidentally contracted by Jiraiya, and the psychic came out. Looking at the little tadpole, he suddenly found the necklace on his body, and when he looked closely, the word, loyalty, was engraved on it. It should be Toad Zhang. Teacher, where did Jiraiya go? Tsunade and Orochimaru hurriedly asked after a brief astonishment. They didn't have this kind of situation when they were practicing just now, and they were extremely anxious. With his reckless character, if something happens, no one can help him. Don't worry. This idiot might have read the scroll I gave him upside down. I'll go find Teacher Tobirama. After leaving this sentence, Danzo disappeared using the instant body technique. Even if he was going to mount Miaomu, he had to stand up for him as a parent so that the old toad wouldn't fool around. The ninja world of the future does not need any children of prophecy. Those people are nothing more than teenagers after all. If you want to get mixed up enough to let these little guys support the sky, then you might as well find a piece of tofu and crash yourself to death. What the ninja world really needs is that spark. The fire that represents red. Naruto building. Teacher. It's not good. Danzo jumped in directly from the window, but saw his teacher holding a barbell and kept waving it, not knowing what he was doing. My grass. Senju Tobirama, who was trying the kendo training method of his silly apprentice, was startled, and the barbell in his hand fell to the floor, shaking the whole room. He jumped in front of the barbell in an instant, lowered his head and took a sneak peek, and found that he couldn't hide it at all. He couldn't help shouting at Danzo angrily, "How many times have I said this? Can you come through the door next time? Baga." "Ahaha, teacher, please act in a hurry." It was too late to ponder the strange behavior of Senju Tobirama-sensei, so I hurriedly told him about the idiot Jiraiya. He is also a talent who can reverse the use of spiritism. You know, there are only 5 seals in spiritism. After listening to the whole process, Tobirama didn't have time to pay attention to the barbell on the ground, and with his eyes closed, he began to feel where he was flying Thunder God Kurenai. A strange signal came from flying thunder gods across the space. In the dormitory of the Fire Nation Daimyo? No Mist Ninja Village building? No. Near Lei Ying's house in Lei Ren Village? No. In the end, an extremely weak signal reached Tobirama's mind, and his eyes opened with a flash of light. Found it. Turning around and nodding to Danzo, he dropped 3 specially made flying thunder god Kurenai, forming a triangle formation to surround the 2 of them. A strange ninjutsu wave echoed in Naruto's office. The art of flying thunder array. Following the activation of ninjutsu, the 2 disappeared immediately, leaving only the 3 flying thunder god Kurenai in the office. Almost in the blink of an eye, Danzo and Senju Tobirama passed through many spaces and came to a completely unfamiliar environment. In this large mountain, a river forms a waterfall from the cliff. On both sides of the river, toad stone houses are located here, which is really a strange scenery. Just as Danzo was looking around, countless toads poured out from all directions, surrounding the 2 of them. Under the observation of the knowledgeable, these toads all have strange chakras. Although the amount of chakra is far less than that of theirs, but in terms of purity, they don't know how much they beat them. The chakra on these toads has also been used by the elder brother. This is the chakra of the immortal technique. Senju Tobirama sensed these toads once, analyzed them calmly, and also told Danzo. Why are humans coming again? Yeah, a little guy came here just now, and now there are 2 more. No human has been here for many years, but I didn't expect 3 to come today. Behind the group of toads, a few giant toads looked at the 2 people in the doorway, uttering human words and talking on their own. What? Where is the person you're talking about? Hearing the news about his silly apprentice from them, Danzo was overjoyed and asked immediately. Hey, human beings, I have to tell you after you ask me? A huge toad smoking a pipe glanced at him and said with a puff of smoke. You bastard. This kind of tone made Danzo couldn't help but feel angry. Zanpakuto appeared in his hand from the virtual reality. The atmosphere suddenly became anxious. Mrs. Wen, don't be rude. At this moment, a somewhat old voice came, and the 2 toads walked slowly in front of Danzo, and the toads surrounding the 2 immediately gave way. Since their appearance, Toad Wentai took down the pipe in his mouth, and said slightly respectfully, Elder Shenzo, Elder Jujin. N. The 2 old toads, Fukasaku and Shima, nodded, and said to Danzo and Senju Tobirama. You 2 honored guests who came from afar, the great toad immortal invites you. The two masters and apprentices looked at each other, then walked through the path made by these toads, and went straight to the largest building in the Holy Land. That is the residence of the Great Toad Immortal. After entering the residence of the Great Toad Immortal, what caught the eye was a huge old toad sitting on the sofa in the center of the hall. The whole body is orange, with yellow eyes, a string of beads around the neck, and a lavender opal in the middle, with the word oil written on it. He wears a doctor's hat on his head. It narrowed its eyes slightly, propped its head on one hand, and kept snoring, dozing off. And there was a small figure standing in front of him. He heard the sound of the door opening behind him, and turned his head to look curiously. Teacher Danzo. The originally drooping face suddenly became lively after seeing the comber, and ran directly towards Danzo. Looking at Jiraiya with tears beside his eyes, Danzo hugged him and patted his back with his hand. This little guy must have been frightened, and suddenly came to this extremely strange place, surrounded by only a group of toads. Not even a human figure. Yo, Jiraiya, haven't you seen your master? Feijian looked at the two of them and couldn't help joking. After hearing Feijian's words, Jiraiya also raised his head, and said embarrassedly, Master Feijian. At this moment, the two old toads also walked into the house, looked at the big toad fairy sitting on the high seat, sighed helplessly, and jumped onto the high seat with one jump. Shaking its body vigorously, at this moment, the big toad fairy slowly opened its eyes, looked at them, smacked its lips, and said leisurely. It's between Kofukasaku and Koshi, what's the matter? Hearing what it said, Fukasaku and Shima looked at each other. A few black lines appeared on their foreheads, and reminded, Sage Toad, we brought the two you mentioned here. Oh, that's it. After being reminded by them, it looked at the three Danzo standing on the ground. Hello. Distinguished guests from Konoha. Danzo and Feijian looked at each other, and the latter stepped forward and said, Hello, Toad Immortal from Mount Miyaomu, who is taking the liberty to visit, please don't blame him. Ha ha ha, it's not too presumptuous, everything is already doomed. After saying this, its eyes lingered on Danzo intentionally or unintentionally. I don't know why, more than 20 years ago, the fate in the originally clear dream suddenly became blurred, and at the turning point of everything, a figure appeared. That was the black-haired young man standing in front of him now. In those limited fragments, he ignited countless flames of thought in the ninja world. Even if there were only a few words, the thoughts contained in them shocked him extremely. You must know that it has lived for thousands of years and created the entire Miyaomu mountain with one hand. It has experienced everything and talked with countless outstanding people, but it has never felt such a fearless thought. Dare to overthrow others, but also dare to overthrow oneself. On this basic point, it represents that it has a strong vitality that other thoughts do not have. Other ideas, including the bloodline theory prevalent in the ninja world, all emphasize stability at their core, and have never thought of such a path at all. In the hands of Danzo, the ninja world glowed with unprecedented brilliance, and everyone has a direction to fight for. It's not like now, except for a few places where there is enough food and clothing, the rest are struggling on the line of food and clothing. The upper echelons of the country are basically fixed, and they are only circulated in a few families, and the truly talented people at the grassroots level cannot climb the meat-eater class at all. Ninjas are fine, as long as they are talented, they can still make a difference with their own strength, while those ordinary people are really desperate. But this is also good, it is convenient for Danzo to develop underground forces, and many people who are underappreciated are included in the bag. In the organization developed on the basis of the Shadow Mercenary Corps, real flames are being bred under the false Fire Nation. A flame that can make the entire ninja world boil. Thinking of those clips, Immortal Toad couldn't help but shudder. Looking down at Danzo, he said slowly, Fukasaku and Shima go out first, I have something to tell him. Eyes drifted to Senju Tobarama and Jiraiya. The expulsion order was also speaking to them. Looking at the mysterious old toad in front of him, he seemed to have malicious intentions, and the flying thunder god Kurenai slipped into his hand, holding it calmly, ready to strike at any time. Seeing his teacher's behavior like this, Danzo stretched out a hand to hold it, and shook his head slightly. It just so happened that he also wanted to ask this old toad something. After feeling the thoughts of his silly apprentice, he handed the kunai in his hand to Danzo, then took Jiraiya's hand and walked out the door. The moment he went out, he glanced at Danzo, and then walked out with big strides. He is not worried about accidents at all, although the old toad makes people unable to see the depth, the pure chakra in his body makes him extremely afraid, and there is a group of toad army with fairy chakra. But with Fei Jian's current strength, even if he can't beat them, he can run away. Make him anxious, be careful that he leaves a flying thunder god mark here, and go hunting from time to make fried bullfrogs. In the empty hall, only Danzo and the big toad sage were left, one person and one frog. The two stared at each other silently, and in the eerie silence, Immortal Toad opened his mouth first. Shimura Danzo? Where are you from? What do you want to do? His biggest secret was revealed by the toad in front of him. Danzo's pupils shook slightly, and then suppressed the waves in his heart, and said calmly. It doesn't matter where I come from. Walking around in the hall, he sat on a stone chair, picked up a grape from the fruit plate on the stone table, and put it into his mouth. Chewed a bit, and spat out the core. I want to do more, such as change the world. What? Old Toad, you want to stop me? After saying this, Danzo's eyes flashed red, and the magic circle of the sealed black shadow mask in his pupils kept turning, ready to undo the gossip seal at any time. After all, this old toad really didn't know its strength. If it really wants to stop itself, it can only do its best to turn this Miaomu mountain into only a mountain. Seeing the red light in Danzo's eyes, the great toad immortal Shi Shiren, who was originally sitting on the high seat, no longer lost his leisurely posture, and quickly said, No, the human world has nothing to do with Miaomu mountain. Among the few scenes it saw, there was one where his eyes glowed red, he was surrounded by black air, holding a black knife on the battlefield, and underneath were the corpses of the war dead. Many of them are well-known strong men in the ninja world, and even in the future, he can look at himself through dreams, grin at it with a grin, and then swing his knife at it. This is the first time that Immortal Toad has been awakened by a dream in thousands of years. Let it be unsettled for a long time. Jiraiya was able to come to Mount Miaomu this time. In fact, there was a little bit of interference from him, and the ultimate goal was to get to know the black-haired young man in front of him. Now it seems that a little curiosity killed the frog. After hearing the answer from the old toad in front of him, Danzo breathed a sigh of relief, let go of his vigilance a little bit, and the ceiling circle whose eyes kept turning slowly stopped. If he hadn't had to, he didn't want to fight this big toad fairy. This old guy who has lived for more than 1,000 years can be called a fairy no matter where he is. The strength of a body is even more unfathomable. According to Danzo's calculations based on a few words from his previous life, its strength should be between Chaoing and Ludao, and it can be called a quasi-6 Dao powerhouse. As far as I am now a movie level, little Xiami, let alone a duel in normal state, being able to survive 3 rounds is due to Danzo's extraordinary talent. Only by opening the ceiling circle and releasing the negative self plus Tobirama sensei can there be a chance to fight it. But, it's just a fight. If you want to defeat this old toad, it's absolutely impossible with your current self. Besides, the sequelae of opening the seal of the Black Shadow Mask are really bigger. After 2 years of wearing down the magic circle, it was only in exchange for this opportunity to be able to open it. If something happens in the future, then I won't be able to recover from it. After discovering that the red light in Danzo's eyes disappeared, Immortal Toad also heaved a sigh of relief. Of course he was not afraid of this young man, but outside the building he was his own frog son and grandson. If there was a fight, it would definitely affect them. What's more, there is still this guy called Qianshaobanjian outside. If it were to choose the shadows of the 5 great shadow villages to fight, it would definitely not choose him. As far as this guy's trick is concerned, he is afraid that his thousands of years of experience will not be able to see the structure of the door. In the previous dream, he could always set up traps at the beginning, waiting for the prey to step on it step by step. This time, I just wanted to find Jiraiya, and after teaching this little guy, Miaomushan will have a good relationship with their master and apprentice. It's just that the plan can't keep up with the change. Who knows why they were able to use the Flying Thunder God to find them, and they didn't mention it in the current dream. What I dreamed before was that only the little guy Jiraiya came here alone. If it hadn't been for the perception that Danzo and the others were coming, Xiao Wentai's violent temper would have probably already started fighting with them. It didn't end well at that time. Then she sorted out her mood, coughed lightly, and said leisurely. Then please come and stay, he just passed the assessment of my Miaomu mountain. Hearing the words of Immortal Toad, Danzo's eyes flashed. This happened to be what he wanted to say, but since it spoke first, he had the capital to bargain, so he pretended to be embarrassed. Well, Jiraiya is my dear apprentice after all. Leaving him here alone is really, seeing Danzo's unconcerned performance, the great Toad Immortal took a deep breath, and really didn't want to pay attention to this little fox, but the picture of the future reminded himself that it really might not be able to protect Miaomu Mountain with its own strength. Gritting his teeth, he said, tell me, what do you want to do? I need toad oil, a lot of toad oil. This answer made it a little surprised. Toad oil is not a precious thing in Miaomu Mountain. The baby toads basically have the magic chakra. That is to say, only those human beings who practice immortal mode will use that kind of thing. But now it has been a long time since human beings have come to Mount Miaomu, and a lot of toad oil from the heritage of the Holy Land has survived. And will it affect the status of its 3 holy places? Come on, They are the ones that produce toad oil, and the inventory in Danzo's hand will run out one day. There is no problem in giving it to him, just. If you want to practice immortal mode, you can try it here. Why do you need so much toad oil? Toad oil, which can strengthen people's natural energy, is naturally a good thing, but if you only look at its usefulness, you will feel that it is useless. But what about this natural energy? This is what belongs to buying the box and returning the pearl. Understanding the essence of this power is what Danzo really wants. Just as knowing the principle changes the whole of physics. What is truly mysterious and powerful in this ninja world is not the chakra on the surface, but the natural energy that appears around everyone. Besides, the fairy mode of Mount Miyaomu is not so easy to master, since Shimura Danzo in the original book did not master it. He didn't believe that Konoha would send out such a powerful force and not use it. Besides, Miyaomu Mountain would not reject any testers. It's just that many losers have become those stone statues, and who knows Danzo's arm hidden under the bandage. Then it is very possible that he cannot practice this immortal mode now. Instead of this, it's better to install this bee completely. Don't let this old toad know about my uncle's shortcomings. Sitting on the high seat, the immortal toad lowered his head, pondered for a long time, and then nodded. Then. Well, Ben Frog agrees. Originally, I just wanted to make a connection with Danzo, so it is okay to give some insignificant toad oil. If you can't let go of the child, you can't tie the wolf, and this guy is more cunning than the wolf. Squeak. The heavy door slowly opened from the inside to the outside, and Danzo walked out with big strides with a smile on his face. Teacher Danzo. Jiraiya also saw his eyes light up, waved his hands excitedly, stood beside him with a smile and watched, and hid the flying thunder god Kurenai in his hand again somewhere on his body. Immortal Fukasaku and Immortal Shima looked at each other with smiles on their faces. During their short time with this little guy Jiraiya, they also liked his full of energy. Now it seems that the negotiation is settled, which means that Jiraiya can be left as the inheritor of Miyagi Mountain. Yeah. Danzo walked up to him, rubbed his head with a smile, knelt down, looked at him solemnly and said, "Little Jiraiya, do you want to stay here and practice fairy arts?" His expression was extremely serious. If Jiraiya didn't want to stay here, then he would take him away, and he didn't want toad oil either. After all, the most important thing is for this little guy to be happy. Jiraiya looked at Danzo's extremely serious expression, and turned his head to look at the two toad immortals beside him who seemed calm but were actually suffering in their hearts. Head up and down, nodded. Teacher Danzo, I want to stay here. The two toad immortals grinned and couldn't help laughing. There were flames in Jiraiya's eyes. In the past, Brother Danzo went to the battlefield by himself, but he was powerless. I also want to help my elder brother, but no matter how hard I try, my strength can't keep up. Seeing that the gap in strength between Tsunade and Orochimaru is getting bigger and bigger, he looks carefree on the surface, but he is extremely anxious in his heart. Now, he finally had an opportunity in front of him, and he wanted to prove it. Jiraiya is not weaker than others in his life. I also want to make my own reputation on the battlefield, just like my big brother, protect my homeland and the people I cherish with my blood. As he thought about it, a blonde figure appeared in his mind. Hey, I really can't practice the immortal mode of Mount Miyaomu. Looking at the little finger that showed slight signs of turning into a stone, Danzo sighed, his finger shook, and the layer of stone skin wrapped outside was shaken into powder. I just dipped a little bit of toad oil on purpose to try to see if I can successfully practice immortal mode. To be careful, I just used my little finger. The ending was as expected. The violent natural energy entered my body and didn't obey orders at all. The chakra in the body has no effect on them at all, and even strengthens the rage of natural energy. If he hadn't used the armed colors in time to block these natural energies, his little fingers would probably have turned into stones. Instead of just petrifying a layer of skin like now. After handing over these toad oils to the researchers of the Scientific Research Institute and explaining their uses, all of those people's eyes were full of excitement, and they wished to start researching it now. An energy different from chakra might be able to help what they are studying now. Looking at these extremely fanatical researchers, Danzo has long been used to it. These guys are always on top of new things, but if they weren't like this, I'm afraid Konoha's technology would not be able to lead the whole ninja world. When walking out of the laboratory, the guards were told to pay more attention to the health of these scientific researchers, in case they forgot about other activities. The sunlight outside the laboratory building is just right, and the knowledge is swept away. There are no less than 10 dark parts secretly protecting this place. They nodded. This is one of Konoha's important organs, and the necessary defense is indispensable. And Tsunade and Orochimaru were waiting for him outside, and when he was about to step forward and take them to the training ground, a hurried voice reached his ears. Master Danzo. Urgent mission. an Anbu ninja suddenly appeared in front of Danzo, panting heavily. His performance gave Danzo a bad premonition that something big must have happened for such an elite ninja to come here in such a hurry. After knowing that the destination was the Hokage building, the instantaneous body technique was activated, and he ran at an extremely fast speed like a ray of breeze. Bang! Pushing open the door of Hokage's office and hurried in, he saw his teacher frowning tightly holding a letter. "Teacher, what's the matter?" Senju Tobarama glanced at Danzo, beckoned, handed over the letter in his hand, and took it curiously. The words on it were dark red, and the handwriting was scrawled. After reading the 10 lines at a glance, my eyes fell on the signature at the bottom. The signatory, Hiruzen Sarutobi. Now you are the fastest in the village, and you are the only one who is most likely to stop it. Seeing that he had read the entire content of the letter, Phaegian said in a deep voice. Understood. After saying this, he turned and left. Danzo is indeed already the best candidate for this matter. Lei Ren and these bastards actually secretly put 8-tailed in the Land of Fire. The location is still an economically important city with a huge population. If any accident happens, many ordinary people will definitely be affected. When I saw the beginning, Danzo was still very surprised, because there is actually an unspoken rule in the ninja world that he will not directly attack ordinary people, and Raikage naturally understands this truth. It's a pity that the leaders are the two lunatics Ginkaku and Kinkaku. They are notorious for their goals and unscrupulous means. This time, I'm afraid they will make their own decisions again. Since the last time they fought with Mito-sama, the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, and annexed some Nine Tails chakras in the First World War, their methods have become darker. The Nine Tails chakra clearly magnifies the dark side of their hearts. And this time they led the team just happened to be discovered by Rizan and his squad, and they tore off their clothes in extreme urgency, and wrote this letter with blood. And Hiruzen Sarutobi led the first team to continue to follow, in case Ginkaku Kinkaku released Hachio. Anyway, they are all ninjas. It is necessary to assume the mission of protecting ordinary people. Even if Matt took them on, he just endured. The incident happened suddenly. As soon as Danzo walked outside the building, he bit his finger and pressed it to the ground. As a puff of smoke drifted past, Toothless Boy appeared on the spot. Just as he was about to spread his wings and fly high, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Teacher, we are going too. Tsunade and Orochimaru appeared in front of Danzo with a jump, and said firmly. This time is too dangerous, I won't allow it. Looking at these two concerned apprentices, Danzo's heart felt warm, but this time it was really dangerous, the words of the two forbearance. Teacher, we have learned what you said about the change of chakra attributes. Dashimaru looked at his teacher's face, and immediately understood what Danzo was thinking, and quickly spoke. Stretching out his right hand, a small water polo appeared in the palm of Orochimaru, constantly changing its shape. In the end, it turned into a little snake, wrapped around his body, spitting out letters from time to time. The scales on his body are clearly visible, and even the patterns on each scale can be seen. This means that Orochimaru already has the strength of Chunin, and Tsunade's aura is the same as him. The strange force technique in his hand became more and more powerful. Although he didn't have the subtle control power like Orochimaru, it was obvious that his attack power had also increased. Thoughts raced through his mind, he finally nodded. Great. They happily jumped up together and hugged Danzo's waist tightly. Toothless Boy looked at the two little guys on his back, bared his teeth, and his mouth shone brightly. Not everyone can ride myself. Seeing this, Danzo sighed helplessly, patted Toothless's head, stretched out 2 fingers, and waved in front of its eyes. The light in his mouth slowly dissipated, he held his head proudly, turned his head slightly and cast a glance at Danzo. It seems to be saying, this is for your face, not for the delicious food of those 2 meals. Then he spread his wings and disappeared in place with the 3 people on his back, turning into a black spot in the sky. Danzo squeezed the letter in his hand, and looked firmly into the distance. Monkey, hold on, your daddy Danzo is here to save you. The wind blew by my ears, with the sound of whoosh, the scenery below changed rapidly, and a black spot turned into lightning and passed through the white clouds. If a farmer happened to look up, he would find this black lightning, and it disappeared in a blink of an eye. He rubbed his eyes and regarded it as a conversation piece. Teacher, Toothless is flying so fast. Tsunade stretched out her arm, and the palm of her hand slid across the clouds under the protection of chakra. The seemingly soft white cloud stayed in her hand for a moment, turning into water droplets and surrounding her palm. Soon, it was turned into mist by the sun, and it became wisps of white clouds floating in the blue sky. Orochimaru looked at the white cloud that was constantly changing states, thoughtfully. Perhaps he could try this kind of ninjutsu fusion in combination with the change of chakra attributes that the teacher said. Of course, at the speed of Toothless Boy, it takes about 2 hours to reach the monkey. Now it stands to reason that it is almost there. After saying that, he patted Toothless Boy lightly with his hand, and spit out a dark blue fireball from his mouth. After passing through, the speed of the whole dragon increased again, completely turning into a phantom. Not long after, he arrived at the place Sarutobi Hiruzen said at dusk. A prosperous city appeared in front of Yilong and the three of them. Even though it was almost night, the crowd was still bustling, and the guards at the city gate were guarding the gate dutifully. Turning his thoughts, he gestured to the Toothless Boy below with his eyes, so that the speed of it that should have slowed down did not change at all, and it went straight over the city wall and rushed into the city. This time, Ginkaku and Kinkaku and these two guys must pay the price, so they can't startle the snake. They must send someone to watch the city gate, in case things change. They're crazy, yes, but they're not stupid at all. On the contrary, they were still very cunning, but it was a pity that they met themselves. Sitting on the dragon's back, Danzo showed a confident smile. Since he dared to come to the country of fire to make trouble, he must be prepared. In the end, he found a relatively remote alley and dropped a piece of dried fish. Toothless turned his head and disappeared into smoke. The moment he left, he gave Danzo a look. Make a gesture and don't forget to promise it 2 big meals. He took out several black cloaks from the system space, picked up 2 fitted ones and threw them to Tsunade and Orochimaru, and put them on himself. After completing this series of actions, night has completely enveloped the entire city. Unlike Konoha, the electric lights here have not yet been fully popularized, but some wealthy people's homes are still lit. His eyes searched in the alley, and soon, Danzo found some special places, which were the exclusive codes of Konoha Onbi. He beckoned, and Orochimaru and Tsunade silently followed behind him. The three of them followed the signs left by the monkey to search all the way, and finally stopped in front of a small dark courtyard, and carefully pushed open the courtyard door. A hand suddenly stretched out from behind the door panel, about to grab Danzo's neck, but he didn't expect Danzo to be faster than him, and twisted the attacker's arm off with a backhand. Ah, Danzo, it's me. Hearing a familiar voice, Danzo smiled and let go of his hand. The attacker's face became clear under the moonlight. It was Sarutobi Hiruzen. The latter was extremely surprised, did not expect that the gap between him and this guy was already so big. Completely crushed in physical skills, why is this guy's physique so hard? Is this still a ninja? I didn't expect you to strike so hard. He twisted the arm held by Danzo in pain, but there was no response. Obviously his arm had been removed, and he couldn't help complaining in a resentful tone. Who told you to attack me? Although Danzo said so, he grabbed Sarutobi Hiruzen's arm again. Twist, and with a click, his arm was connected again. Danzo-sama. 3 slightly youthful voices came from the back room, and then Matt Dai and the 3 of them came out. Their appearance made Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was about to cry out because of the pain, hold back abruptly, but his entire face was slightly distorted due to the pain. Hey, Teacher Rizan, why do you look so bad? Hitaki Sakumo looked at Danzo in surprise, and then noticed that their teacher was pale, and there was a slight layer of cold sweat. It's okay. After moving my arm and finding it back, I breathed a sigh of relief, resisting the urge to hit the smiling guy next to me, and said through gritted teeth. It's definitely not because you can't beat it. Okay, tell me what's going on with Lei Ren. Putting away the smile on his face, he asked this question that he had been concerned about for a long time, with a cold tone. Hearing Danzo's words, Hiruzen Sarutobi's face sank, he sighed, and stretched out his hand to signal them to enter the room before talking. So he led Tsunade and Orochimaru into the house. Sarutobi Hiruzen took out a notebook from the hiding place in the house, handed it to Danzo, and said in a deep voice. This is the record of those Lei Ren in the past few days. I dare not go close to follow them, for fear of being discovered by those 2 fighting lunatics. While looking at these records, while listening to him tell. This time, there were no less than 15 Lei Ren lurking in, led by Ginkaku Kinkaku. There were a few special Junin, and the rest were Chunin. Sure enough, as he expected, there were gangsters hired by Lei Ren to supervise every city gate, and they would report immediately when they found Konoha ninjas in the city. Sure enough, no matter where, there is this kind of scum that doesn't care about others. It's just that the focus is not on them now, and they will be liquidated later. Otherwise, wouldn't it be deceiving me that the root of the knife is not good? After understanding all the data, Danzo supported his head with one hand and meditated, tapping his fingers on the tabletop at a certain frequency, making a crisp sound. Don't worry about these little bastards for the time being. The most important thing now is the specific location of the 8 tails. After Sarutobi Hiruzen heard this, he took out a map from his pocket, pointed to the 2 places marked with crosses and said, Those guys are very cunning, they divide several places to confuse possible enemies. But after my investigation, I found that these two places are the most likely. With a fixed gaze, these two places are one of the most economically and populously developed places in the city. Thinking of this, Danzo's eyes have already burst into flames. These two guys are simply damned. In the dark night, the factory in the densely populated area in front of me is like a devil crawling on the ground, opening its mouth, waiting for any passing traveler to stray into it. Is this one of those two places? Danzo held the map in his hand, compared the surrounding terrain, nodded, and walked in with the two of them. This is the place he wants to investigate. There was an accident in this factory a few months ago. Dozens of workers died in this accident, and the boss of the place was also arrested because of this incident. Another month ago there were rumors of a haunted place. Therefore, this place can be abandoned. Thinking about it in another way, it can be said that it is extremely suitable if it is used as a secret sneak attack stronghold. After discussing with the monkey, they decided to explore a place alone, and then they gathered together to concentrate their efforts to completely destroy Lei Ren's conspiracy. The Black Knight clothes were completely integrated with the night. The three of Danzo jumped over the outer wall of the factory one by one, landed silently, scanned around, checked the surrounding environment, and continued to grope inside after confirming that there was no one there. The inside of the factory was darker than its periphery. The towering walls cut off the cold moonlight, and the sultry air reverberated inside. Only a few small windows added a bit of popularity to the place. I searched here secretly for a long time, but found nothing unusual. I touched the dust by the window with my hand, and there was a thick layer of dust. It is really strange that no one has stayed here for a long time. Teacher, come and see. While bowing his head to think, Orochimaru said excitedly to Danzo. It turned out that he saw a few shallow footprints on the ground, which he would never have noticed unless he looked carefully. The three of them looked at each other and walked towards the place of discovery. On the way to approach, for some reason, Danzo always felt something was wrong. Vigilantly summoned the Zanpakuto, squeezed it tightly in his hands, and followed his steps carefully to find it. As the crowd approached, there were more and more footprints on the ground, suppressing the excitement in my heart, increasing my speed, and catching up. Unexpectedly, all the footprints disappeared in one place, and when he looked up, he saw a clown doll hanging from the beam. And the expression on its face seemed to be laughing at the visitor. Damn it, we've been tricked. Tsunade looked at the doll and was furious. After picking up the chakra, he jumped up, grabbed the clown doll, and pulled it off violently. Danzo didn't have time to stop it, but the premonition in his heart became stronger. When she flipped through it in her hand, a line of small characters was pasted on the back of it. Congratulations, you have indeed been tricked. The clown's eyes flashed red. Danzo suddenly felt bad, and kicked the doll that Tsunade was holding into the air. With a wave of the black knife in his hand, a wind barrier appeared on the spot, enclosing the three of them. As soon as the doll landed, a strong shockwave erupted, throwing the originally neat factory into chaos, and a deep hole was blown out in the ground. As the smoke dissipated, although the three of them were not harmed, Danzo's face was a little ugly. It seemed that this time the enemy was much more cunning than he thought. You all come with me. After leaving this sentence, the whole person's teleportation technique was brought to the extreme, almost turning into a ray of breeze, shuttling over the house. It's too late to teach some sloppy Tsunade a lesson. The explosion here will definitely alert Rai Ren. Or, they'll release the tailed beast early. Or, they are afraid that they will transfer the 8 tails. Now the real 8-tailed hiding place is in the monkey. Orochimaru patted Tsunade, who was blaming himself, and followed behind Danzo. But she gritted her teeth and followed Orochimaru. Anyway, the anger in her heart was successfully aroused by Lei Ren and the others. Damn it. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at the golden and silver horns who were looking at him playfully in front of him, feeling annoyed in his heart, and the 3 disciples behind him were still fighting with several Chunin. Mitadai Aa and Hitaki Sakumo could hold on for the time being, but Hyakujiho was already retreating steadily, relying on the 3-person battle formation to barely hold on. If this goes on, it's only a matter of time before they lose. Their minds turned and they stared at the 2 people in front of them tightly. They bit their teeth and pressed their fingers to the ground. Psychic Ape King Ape Demon. Shadow Clone. It's such a difficult enemy again. The smoke cleared, and a huge ape in armor appeared on the spot, and he dealt with Ginkaku and Kinkaku together. Sorry, Ape Demon, Vajra Ruyi. I understand. The ape demon turned into a stick and was cut by Hiru Sarutobi in his hand. He squinted his eyes, and a drop of sweat slid down his forehead. Now time is not on his side, we can only see if we can get rid of them quickly. Thinking this way in his heart, but looking at them, these 2 powerful Lei Ren who have a great and fierce reputation, they have no confidence at all. MD, Danzo, when are you coming over? I can only take a risk and try to use my own newly developed results. The Vajra wish stick in his hand stretched at a very fast speed, and a furry arm protruded from the top of the stick, and when they didn't notice it, it tightly imprisoned them. Good chance. Seeing that his tactics were successful, Hiruzen Sarutobi's eyes lit up. Several shadow clones jumped away, surrounded Ginkaku and Kinkaku and Ginkaku and Kinkaku in a fan shape, and their fingers kept flying, forming 4 kinds of ninjutsu with different attributes. Compound Ninja A Earth Dragon Flame Stream, Thunder Dragon Ball. The 4 kinds of ninjutsu are fused in pairs, and they want to fuse again after transforming into a more powerful ninjutsu. When it was about to succeed, it broke apart at the last moment. It became the original 2 ninjutsu again, and ruthlessly bombarded the 2 people who were imprisoned by the ape demon. Damn it, sure enough, the 4 attribute combination ninjutsu still failed. The shadow clones disappeared one by one, and the Vajra wish stick returned to its original length and returned to Sarutobi Hiruzen's hand. He panted heavily and looked towards the dusty place with hopeful eyes. Did you make it? It really hurts, bastard. As the smoke dissipated, Ginkaku and Kinkaku half kneeled on the spot, slowly stood up, and red chakra emerged from his body, wrapping the injured area. Feeling this evil and powerful chakra, Hiru Sarutobi swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and couldn't help taking half a step back. Suddenly, they disappeared from sight, and appeared next to Sarutobi Hiruzen in an instant, hitting him with great force with the fist in his hand. Just as Sarutobi Hiruzen blocked a fist, another fist hit him, and he was thrown upside down at once, leaving a long drag mark on the ground. He fell to the ground, covered the part that was attacked just now, spat out a mouthful of blood, and the Vajra wishful stick turned into a monkey demon again to support the injured Sarutobi Hiruzen. Turning his head to look at the 3 disciples who were still fighting hard, his heart was bitter, and the pain from all over his body had been constantly reminding him that he could no longer fight. Now, I'm afraid it's the real confession here. Is it only possible to do this? It really disappoints me. Ha ha ha, please. Maybe we'll let the 4 of you go. Ginkaku lowered his head with a smirk and said, a person was being trampled on under his feet, and the ape demon collapsed to the ground, having lost the ability to fight. Feeling the power coming from his head, Hiruzen Sarutobi knew in his heart that as long as the owner of this foot used force, he would definitely die. If you are facing one person, even if you are not as strong as them, you can still withstand them, but there are 2 of them. Coupled with the tacit understanding of cooperation since childhood, the combined strength of the 2 of Ginkaku and Kinkaku is far stronger than the effect of 1 + 1. His strength is much higher than that of an elite JNIN, because they have reached the level of Kage together. Is it really necessary to surrender in humiliation? In the face of death, no one can calm down, and even his 3 disciples. Hitaki Sakumo, who was fighting hard on the side, saw his teacher being treated like this by the enemy. His eyes were about to split. He raised a short knife to the golden horn, and said coldly, "No, we will never surrender." Matt wore a haze to injure Lei Ren, who wanted to approach, stared at the surrounding Lei Ren, and shouted, "How could a Konoha ninja surrender? Just bet on my dazzling youth." The ninjas of Konoha never surrendered. Baijilian held his injured arm with a calm tone. Looking at the 3 disciples who had already awakened, Sarutobi Hiruzen couldn't help but burst into tears, and his shaken heart was reaffirmed by their words, and he burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, well said, we Konoha don't have a coward, you 2 trash. If you want to do it, do it. After saying this, Hiruzen Sarutobi closed his eyes as if accepting his fate. This time, I really want to say goodbye to Hokage. Danzo, you still win in this life. Tisk tisk tisk, this is no fun, although I didn't intend to let you go. Hearing their answers, Ginkaku shook his head and sighed. The one under his feet is now Hokage's disciple. If he could hear his humble cry for help before he died, it must be extremely pleasant. It's a pity that I didn't get what I wanted, all because of the 3 little devils over there. He has obviously hesitated. Brother, let me do the 3 brats over there later. Silverhorn licked his lips. He needed their screams to make him feel better. He wants to kill someone. HMPH, alright, then it will be cheaper for you. Let's send him on his way now. Facing his younger brother's words, Ginkaku agreed, then looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen at his feet, and shook his head slightly. Like a cat getting tired of playing with a mouse, he slowly lifted his feet up, accumulating strength. If you step on it all at once, will it burst like a watermelon? Hey fun. A flash of excitement flashed in Ginkaku's eyes, and he stepped on it hard. Die. Ha ha ha. Ha. The moment the foot touched the ground, the whole ground shook, but there was no other sound. Ginkaku felt that the soles of his feet did not have the proper touch, so he couldn't help but look down. There is no Sarutobi Hiruzen under his feet, it has become empty. It seems that I came in time. Shimura Danzo stood not far away, and gently let go of Sarutobi Hiruzen who was hugging him. Now this guy can be said to have lost the ability to fight, so let's be a cheerleader. Just in time. If you take another step, labor and management will say goodbye. Seeing that he was safe for the time being, Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled and cursed at Danzo, and his whole body was filled with the joy of the rest of his life. Now that he's here, his life is guaranteed. At least, those two guys on the opposite side can't do anything to him. As a man who has been fighting against Danzo for more than 20 years, he has this confidence. Although it is not clear whether Danzo admits it or not. Baga, you were the Onbi from Konoha before. Ginkaku looked at Danzo, who was able to save people from under his feet, and was very vigilant in his heart. He suddenly felt that he looked familiar, and when he saw the black knife in his hand, he gritted his teeth and said. He was scolded by Raikage before because of Anbu, but he didn't expect to stand in front of them now. The combination of old and new hatred directly made their teeth itch with hatred. After so many years, you still haven't made much progress. Turning the knife in his hand, the tip of the knife pointed obliquely at the ground, with a disdainful tone. Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was resting at the side, yelled in his heart. Labor and management were also present back then. Hey! Why don't you mention wages? Look down on me. HMPH, then I'll let you see if we've made any progress over the years. The eyes of the two were full of hatred, and they looked at each other and nodded. Half-tailed beast. The body of Ginkaku and Kinkaku has undergone obvious changes, but it still maintains a human shape. At the same time, it is accompanied by the obvious gushing state of tailed animal chakra, covering the dark red-tailed animal chakra. 6 tails emerged behind him, emitting an extremely evil aura. He turned his head with a smirk, making the sound of bones colliding. What? They weren't at their full strength just now. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at the state of the two with an ugly expression. He didn't expect that after fighting for so long just now, they didn't show their true strength. For a while I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The joke is that if they had tried their best just now, then they probably wouldn't be able to last 10 rounds. The cry is, do they look down on themselves so much? He couldn't even bear to use his full strength. Feeling the current strength of the two of them, Danzo slowly lowered his body, posing as if he drew his sword. Now their strength alone has touched cage class, and he can't be careless in the slightest. The two blood-red 6-tailed foxes separated very quickly and attacked Danzo in different postures. The claws formed by chakra were shining sharply at this moment. Shimura Danzo. Die. At this time, the animal nature in their hearts is greater than human nature, and their eyes are full of madness. Now they only want to completely tear the person in front of them into pieces. Clang. The blade blocked Ginkaku claws, and there was a sound of metal and stone clinking, and the other hand formed a seal, and was about to give this guy a hard time, but out of the corner of his eye, he found that Kinkaku had come to his side. In desperation, he gave up the excellent opportunity to attack, held the knife again with both hands, and with force, directly shook Ginkaku's claws away. Turning around, slashing with the knife, abruptly chopped off one of the 6 tails of Kinkaku who was about to attack behind him. The chopped-off blood-red tail landed on the ground, twisting as if alive, and then slowly dissipated into the air. Seeing that the sword did not perform well, Danzo narrowed his eyes slightly, turned the blade over, took a step forward, the blade cut through the air, and slashed like a phantom. Looking at the black knife that was slashing at him again, Ginkaku slapped the ground with one hand, quickly dodged Danzo's second knife, turned his head to look at the cut-off part, and another tail slowly grew out. Not long after, Kinkaku's tail number returned to the 6th, and he turned his head to look at Danzo again. His head covered in blood red was half a smile, as if he was mocking the young man with a knife opposite him. It seems to be underestimated. Sensing the meaning contained in the gaze of the 9 tails in front of him, Danzo laughed angrily, looked at the black knife in his hand and murmured. This time we have to make a quick decision. If they release the 8 tails, it will be troublesome, so, we can only use that trick. Contemplating in his heart, he walked forward with firm steps, his aura slowly rose, and his domineering aura was also released, causing flying stones to dance wildly on the field. I really thought that 2 broken foxes could be so rampant. 9 tails chakra's immortality is really troublesome. I can't do anything about it in my normal state, but, do you think you are that kid Uzumaki Naruto? Black smoke emerged from between the eyebrows, entangled around Danzo's body like a living thing, and the sealing circle of his eyes spun rapidly, blood-red light burst out from inside. Click. The sealing circle was slowly released, and the ghost mask swept across the whole body at an extremely fast speed like a beast out of its cage. At this moment, an aura infinitely times more evil than the 9 tails chakra was raging wildly in this battle, and it was no longer clear who was the evil side. Too evil. Crazy. Evil. To violence. labor and management are decent. Two little fox scumbags. Squeezing his fist, feeling a completely different power, Danzo raised his head, looked at the trembling Ginkaku and Kinkaku not far away, and laughed wildly. Kinkaku and Ginkaku lay on the ground, looking vigilantly at Danzo, who looked like a god and a demon. The hair on his body was about to explode. You must know that their nine tails chakra is already the most evil thing in this ninja world. I didn't expect that compared with the guy in front of me, the truth is a bit insignificant. The two looked at each other and opened their mouths. The natural energy of the entire field continued to gather, and two small-tailed beast jades slowly formed in front of them. The pitch-black sphere exudes a terrifying aura. Faced with this move, Danzo, who kept a trace of clarity, did not dare to be careless. This thing can destroy a small mountain with one shot. Even if it is just a small and weakened version of the tailed beast jade, you have to be extremely careful. What's more, there are residential houses nearby. I also focused on protecting the surrounding residents. I have to say that Ginkaku and Kinkaku really has a good plan. No wonder they are the two guys that Lei Ren called two rays of light in the cloud. In other words, I must take this guy's attack hard, otherwise, the people behind me. Then come on, let's see if it's this little-tailed beast Yu Chang, or his saber sharpness. Slowly leaning over, fixedly staring at the two pitch-black spheres in front of him, like drawing a knife. Go to hell. Damn Konoha bastard. The tailed beast jade was released from the mouths of the two, and only the aftermath swept away the passing ground. Their eyes were extremely excited, and no one understood the horror of this attack better than the two creators of the tailed beast jade. Even the second Raikage, who had practiced the Thunder Ninja physical training technique, he didn't dare to accept this move. Now, it's up to you to choose whether you want to accept this trick for the sake of hypocrisy in your heart, or avoid the tailed beast jade and let the civilians behind you die in your sleep. Ha ha ha, it's so fun. Seeing the two tailed beast jades getting closer, Danzo started to move. The strong wind gathered behind him, and the whole person was bathed in the light blue wind spirit. At the moment when the attack was about to come, he slowly drew the knife, and all the energy was condensed on the blade at once. One sword style, pole, and slashing wind. The blade slashed on the tailed beast jade, and the collected energy faintly formed a blue dragon, the dragon's mouth tightly biting the tailed beast jade, preventing it from moving forward. The whole black knife continued to squeak, and the ground under Danzo's feet continued to collapse, causing the surrounding ground to crack. His arms trembled crazily, and all muscles were mobilized to resist this terrifying force. Ah! Get up! Gritting his teeth, he exploded with every bit of power hidden in his body, and with all his strength in his arms, he punched him into the sky abruptly. Bang! The tailed beast jade exploded in the sky, and the terrifying aftermath shook all the clouds. Suddenly, all the clouds in the sky disappeared completely. It can be imagined that tomorrow will definitely be a sunny day. Kneeling down on one knee, he stuck the black knife on the ground, gasping for breath, and blood slowly dripped from the handle of the knife. Danzo took a closer look, and saw that the tiger's mouth on his palm had cracked, and bright red blood continued to flow out. Ha ha ha. What a fool, it's just a group of bug-like civilians who let you protect them like this. But that's good too, let there be less fools in this world. Ginkaku and Kinkaku was really surprised to see that his tailed beast jade could be blocked by this guy in front of him. Based on such strength, he could definitely kill the two of them in his prime, but now he is like a fool protecting the group of ants, which is really stupid. Hey, you are not qualified enough to want me to die. With a knife in his hand, he stood up staggeringly, looked at the two of them fixedly. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The smile was bright, but it was as cold as the 12th lunar month in winter. Then try it. Looking at the staggering Danzo, Ginkaku and Kinkaku smiled cruelly, and the six tails behind him attacked him with the sound of hunting. In the blink of an eye, Danzo was already in danger.